Ladies and gentlemen, you're now tuned in to another episode of the Lab Review. We're your hosts, La Ramsey, Ari, and Britt. And today, we're happy to have with us Margaret Williams as our interview specialist for this evening. Welcome, Margaret.
Welcome. Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Margaret, we know that you are very skilled in this area, so we are ready to dive into this conversation with you all about leveling up. All right? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Level up, 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 level up. Oh, this on me so yummy. Oh, this stuff so yummy. Do you want me just yummy? Yummy up.
All right. Glad, ready to hear how we can best level up and tell you and share with you the best way to level up.
Yes, that's what we are here to talk about tonight. So Margaret, if you can kind of give us just a little background on your area of expertise as it pertains to leveling up.
Well, I am a graduate of Savannah State University with a degree in mass communications. Actually was in the first class of the mass communications program, just dated myself, but proud to say, which is now the School of Journalism and Mass Communications, and with a minor in English and a major in mass comm, concentrating in news editorial. And then I went on to be fortunate to get a scholarship to Ohio State University, where I got my master's degree in public administration, and went on to have been fortunate to have a career in marrying two of my favorite things, communicating and serving the public. I have worked for the city of Savannah in 2 separate tenures. Originally, I worked for the city for 5 years, came back 10 years later, and I've been there now 16 years. In between, I've had a career with Hospice Savannah, which I really loved. I was VP of Marketing and PR. And then I worked with the public library. And because of my love for communication, public outreach, and serving my community, I became an adjunct professor at Savannah State University when we were trying to get the mass communications program accredited. As many of you know, as I see of your love for Savannah State, Dr. Charles Elmore, who was a mentor of mine, reached out to me and asked me to come and serve as a professor while they worked to get the program accredited. And that was back in 2006. And I stayed on as an adjunct professor until recently, 2019, 19. And so I've been teaching in mass communications, love pouring into our young people and preparing them to level up.
All right, awesome. And speaking of young people, I'm sure you've had the opportunity in your many roles to interview some folks for different jobs and different capacities. And I'm wondering, from your experience, just as a little lighthearted situation, can you kind of tell us of an opportunity where you've kind of seen some not so appropriate attire for an interview?
Yes, it has been an interesting, opportunity. What I've done throughout my career is, fortunate enough to grow in my career where I have the opportunity to supervise and lead and hire. And it's been one time that sticks out in my mind so vividly. We interviewed a young woman for a position as a program coordinator with the city of Savannah. And she came to the interview, looked like she rolled straight out of her bed. Her shirt was so wrinkled. I cannot tell you anything that she said in the interview because I was so shocked. She had on a blazer, but her shirt was so wrinkled. It was not tucked in her pants. She totally, if she was qualified and prepared, I don't remember what she said because I was sitting there wondering what made her leave her house for a job interview looking that way. It was just horrible. She could have traded that button down, trying to, I think, meet the, the classic, you need a broadcloth button down and a blazer instead of putting on a t-shirt that may have been freshly pressed in a blazer. And that sticks out in all the years that I've interviewed people. That one stuck out the most. And I'm constantly reminded that first impressions matter, that people judge you before you open your mouth. They make an assessment of you. And so how you look matters.
Yeah. So I think in my current role, I've had an opportunity to kind of work with some graduate level students and kind of prepare them for entry level in the particular field that I'm in. And so trying to translate some of those things to them about appropriate attire for their internship that would then translate into appropriate attire for work. And so I think you kind of hit on some of those things about what's not appropriate. And also you gave us some good feedback about what would be something that's appropriate. And so if you want to add anything else about an ideal appropriate attire for someone who may not have as much money to buy a lot of
Absolutely
professional attire, but with something that they can do with things that they may have to make it appropriate for interview.
And before you answer, I have to let the world know that you are the guru when it comes to spending less for really nice clothes. Because even when I worked with you, it was like, I'm tired of paying $80 for this suit. Hook me up. So please tell them how here's some money. You want me to give you some money? No, girl, you don't need to give me no money. It's cheap. They got all your sizes.
Yes, absolutely. And that's great. Laura Ramsey, that's wonderful to say, because as we transition from the more formal attire and people say, we're more casual now, that may be the case. And I'm going to touch on what you asked too, Ari. You asked about cost. But I want to tie that into the fact that the traditional thought of what you need to look like in a job interview is changing, but it's not.
Right.
People say that when you go for a job, and I'm still interviewing, I have positions open now that I'm interviewing for, even in this virtual environment. And I think that people should not discount, oh my goodness, the secondhand stores, consignment shops. Oh my goodness, you can get great buys, great deals at a little bit of money. You do not have to spend much. Target has a great line. And I think it's not how much your clothes cost, it's how you wear them and how you feel when you wear them. And so people should wear what makes them feel proud about themselves. Now, I know everybody has their own fashion sense, but I think that every woman, man, child, and person should own a black blazer or a blue blazer if they're going on an interview. If you are a professional and work in an office, it should just be hanging in because you could just having a casual day and something happens that you weren't prepared for. Now you got to go somewhere, but you can always grab that blazer, put it on, touch up your makeup and tighten up your jewelry, and you are presentable. And so I think that the stalwart of any good professional wardrobe is a nice button-down pressed shirt, and now they make shirts wrinkle-free. You take them right out, dry, hang them up, and they're nice and so you don't need to go anywhere wrinkled. That's the first thing. I think clean and pressed are the first two things, no matter what you're wearing. And so you don't have to break the bank. You don't have to have on designer wear. I mean, you can get them from designer consignment, but you don't have to have on designer wear. But I think you should always have on a blazer and even just a nice button-down shirt. And for young women, dresses, if that's what you want to wear. But oh my goodness, they shouldn't be too short. I think I'm seeing a transition between what you wear with your friends to the club or to the party does not translate to work wear.
Right.
And I'm going to add this as a woman of size. People are always complimenting me. And I know it's because I dress a certain way for my size. And my philosophy is just because they make it in your size does not mean you should wear it. And I think that some of our young women and young people are being moved by what they see on TV and are trying to be what they see. That works for TV. It's entertainment. It's a show. It is a show. It is not real life. And when you come to me to ask for a job, well, I need to know that if I need to send you out to represent my organization, my department, my company, I'm confident that you can do that. But if you don't know what to wear to even have an interview with me, then I can't trust that you can do that. I get passionate about that. So
We see.
I get excited. I do. I get excited about it because I'm watching what's happening in our culture and our community. I'm not prude. I know I'm older, but I'm not prudish. But I do think that things should be appropriate. And I think we're doing our young people and our children growing up a disservice by not, sure, wear your short dress and your thigh-high boots out with your girlfriends and rock it with your shorts and things. Do that. But do not wear that in your office or to your job, because the reality is you want to level up. You want to be taken seriously for the next level. I'm not looking at you that way.
Mm-hmm. And I noticed the trend that I'm kind of seeing now is younger females will have like on like a club dress or like a bodycon type of thing, and then they'll just put a blazer over it. And suddenly that's supposed to translate to appropriate business attire.
And Ari, I have seen that, and so I don't know I want to say this, and I want to be politically correct in saying it, that if you watch, I'm a soap opera person. I'm sorry, I still watch soap operas. And what I've watched and what I've seen is that the professional women who run these companies and things come to work in these bodycon dresses and their stilettos, and they are running companies. And so we are sending mixed messages.
Right.
If you think if that's your dress, if that's what you wear, and you have on the right foundation, and you are able to wear that, and you can wear it in a nice way. There's a lot of factors what I just listed with that bodycon dress and a blazer. Mm-hmm. And you don't wear it with 4-inch stilettos, you can get away with that. I might. Mm-hmm. I hired someone, and I'm thinking about her now, who works with me now and who is growing, who came to the interview in a bodycon dress. She had on a blazer, and she could wear that. Mm-hmm. She was wearing it, and she was wearing it well and appropriately. It was not short. Mm-hmm. It was long, and it was, she had on 2-inch, 2.5-inch, 3-inch heels, pumps, plain basic pumps, and a blazer. And she had on pearls and professional. She was just professional all the way down. And because she could wear that, and she carried herself in a way that said, I'm a professional. Mm-hmm. She could get away with that. And I think you need a circle of people around you who you can ask, is this okay for what I'm going to do? And be willing to hear that.
So that kind of leads to my next kind of area of conversation about building connections when you're trying to level up to the next level, having appropriate people around you who can help you to connect to certain jobs that you qualify for. And how do you go about building those connections and relationships to position yourself for the next level?
Most professions have a professional organization or a club associated with them, whether it be your business club or for journalists, there's a journalism association. Engineers, there's a club or an organization that represents your discipline. You need to be involved. You need to volunteer. I cannot stress enough. I'm an advocate of United Way, not only for the service it provides, and there's a United Way in every community. So I'm an advocate for it, not only for the services and the support it provides to the community, but for the opportunity it gives young professionals to grow and be professional, as well as to network and meet people. Because most often people who are in United Way is structured, if you ever looked at it, as a growing professional growth organization, even for people who serve and work there. And so volunteering, join an organization and volunteer in a field that, if you're an accountant, offer your services on the board of nonprofits. And so you expand your group based on those organizations and things that you belong to. And then a mentor is, it's a formal word that we use, but most often mentors can be just good friends who have years of experience ahead of you and can offer you sage advice when needed.
Awesome. Well, we are including a new segment to the podcast with some viewer questions. And I think that now is an appropriate time to take in some of those viewer questions, and we'll all kind of pitch in, but we'll let you do the primary responding for the questions.
Sure.
Lon Ramsey, do you have those ready for us?
My question would be, how do I get this position that I've been waiting for over a year for to get, but me and the hiring manager, we don't have a great rapport?
Interesting.
So interesting. Yes, I'm thinking about that. That you and the hiring manager don't have a great rapport, and you've been on the job. I would have several follow-up questions. So you've been on the job a year, or you've been waiting a year for this promotion, and you can't seem to get it because of you and the hiring manager. I would find out, first of all, I would build a relationship with them. The reality is the power, they have the power. And if they have the power and they have something you want, then you need to find out from them, what are they looking for? What is it that their expectation in this person that they're expecting to hire? You also have to remember, and oftentimes we don't want to own this, but that person has watched you for a year and they have an opportunity to know if you're ready or not. Even if I've had the opportunity to promote people in positions who I've hired it in a lower level position and then promoted them to a higher level position, but only did it because I saw something in them to know that they were, even if they didn't have 100% of what was needed in the next position, I've watched them work and know that they could skill up, that they would be willing to do the extra that would be needed to get the job done. And so oftentimes getting a position is a lot more about just the skill. It's especially if somebody's had the opportunity to watch you for a year.
I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier about skills versus or include and relationships.
Well, and also I would add with that,
You did so.
your soft skills, yes, but then you also have to make the decision. If it is that hiring manager that has the issue, like you looked over and you're like, okay, you have to be willing to either make a lateral transfer to another area or a lateral transfers out of the organization, period. And I think a lot of times people will sit and they'll take things because of fear. They don't think they can make it anywhere else, or they're comfortable. But in reality, you're not comfortable because you're ready to move up or even over, and you're not able to, and there's something pressing you down, and you can only work for so long in that state until you do really become what they think you are. You can become that bitter employee. So, as a male spouse, I know the power of having to move whenever it's time to move because I don't have a choice. But had I have had a choice, I would hope that I would start seeking outside, start getting training. You got to do one of those, I can show you better than I can tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And make sure you're getting that resume, you're building it up because they're paying for your training. Take all the training you can get. Make sure that you can't have an issue with everybody. It better just be the one person. Because when you start having issues with a whole bunch of people, it's like, okay, wait a minute. Nobody's in your corner. And I know from past experiences, I've had some difficult bosses, but I know at the end of the day, I work for them. I don't want them to dislike me. I might not care too much for them, but they won't know just how much I dislike them.
Absolutely. All valid. Be willing to move. I do like that you have to be willing to move, but you have to be honest. We have to have courageous conversations with ourselves. And something that La Ramsey said was really on point. Have you done an assessment? Have you really looked around and said, I'm doing it good. I'm doing well. I've done good work. I've not caused a friction in the department. I've not been a problem for the organization. I'm worthy and worth the opportunity to move up. And if that's not happening, because there are personal issues sometimes between employees and staff, and we can't, employers and staff, we can't take that out the picture, but you have to be willing to move because the reality is they still have the power. And unless they are going somewhere, you would then be stuck.
And another key point I took from that about leveling up is getting trainings and certifications in other areas that will make you more marketable to either that position or another position, so that you can have more opportunities and avenues, if things just don't work out in that position that you've been waiting over a year for.
Yes.
Clearly there's some disconnect, and to
Right.
me, after a year, you know, it may be time to look at something else.
And the question I would ask is, did you go and ask them why? You have to be courageous in all areas. Have you had a conversation with the hiring manager to say, why am I not being considered? And I really want to know so that I can do better or improve. And if they won't tell you, then that's a personal issue that you didn't need to assess your surroundings. But if they give you some key points and tell you some things truthfully, I'm very honest with my employees. I'm very honest because I do want all employees to succeed. I think my legacy as a manager or a leader is that I can point to people who've worked for me and they are doing great and wonderful things. I take full credit, La Ramsey. When my people who work for me do well, maybe I poured something in them, I left something with them. It's not always easy, but if you want to level up, if you truly want to be at the top of your game, you're not going to get there by yourself. You have got to listen to some other people and got to be willing to grow and change so that you can get there and do some new things. We're in a new environment. I mean, we look around and see the different kind of work that's being done, the podcasting and the building your own businesses. And there are so many opportunities for people to be successful. You have to find what's right and good for you. And at the same time, recognize that you don't have to do what's different and new around you, and that the traditional trajectory is okay too. And I think all the leveling up is about being confident and good with who you are and knowing who you are. You know, there was a time when my generation jumped on everybody's going to quit their job and use their 401ks and build their own businesses and do their own thing. And I have friends who don't have retirement packages now because they weren't people to be a business person, and would, you know, and now they still have to work because they followed the rest of the crowd. Know yourself, know thyself. I went to school. I've had a passion for public service. I always tell people, well, why you go out and start your own business and things, who's going to close that pothole and pave that street and provide summer lunches to those programs? I'll be the one doing that. I'll be doing those kinds of services, and that's okay. But you got to be okay with that.
I think we're ready for the next question, La Ramsey.
What tips or advice do you have for someone who is stuck in a rut and would like to take their career to the next level?
I think we talked about it, is that training piece. And then doing an assessment of when people say I'm stuck in a rut, I'm always like, what does that mean? My grandchildren call it bored. I'm like, what does that mean? You got all these toys around you. You've got all these access to things around you. You've got all the tech in the world. Why are you bored? Why are you stuck in a rut? Stuck in a rut to me means there's something internal in your spirit that's unsettled. And you need to put your finger on what that is. And
Come on.
And if there's something in you that's pushing you and driving you to do something different, what is keeping you from do that? Is it fear? Are you afraid that people might say, you know, you shouldn't do that? And that's what you really want to do? We're so influenced by what other people think and so afraid to move. And I think you do. I can't go back enough to having those honest, courageous conversations with yourself. And then finding people in those relationships who you can talk to and say, you know what, I feel like I'm in a rut. I'm ready to do some other things, and let them question you, pull it out of you. So what are those other things? What have you been thinking about? You know, have you thought about it? Have you done a Google search to see, you know, what's your passion? We say that and it becomes a cliche, but it is not. If you are working in an area or serving in an area that you are passionate about, you will succeed. You know why? Because you bring your best game to the table, because that is something you want to get right. You stay up late at night to get it done. You know, you work you go the extra mile, you do it on the weekends, you really don't care. And that's when I think I think that's how you get out of ruts.
Well, and it's also going back to you're comfortable being uncomfortable.
Comfortable being uncomfortable.
Correct. Comfortable being uncomfortable.
Until you become uncomfortable being uncomfortable, you'll stay right there. And then you'll make
Well-
everybody around you miserable.
Or worse,
Making fun.
or worse, because a lot of people end up with workplace ailments, or it being in a bad environment or a toxic environment, or being where you shouldn't be. We had Stephanie Epps here, and one of the things she pointed out was the fact that of making sure you're where you want to be. She quit a job. She had a whole job with DOD. She quit that job and went to school to be a nurse. Now she's a doctorate. She has a doctorate of nurse practitioner. And she's also a yoga studio owner, because she said, I couldn't be here. But she did it early on. But I think for some people, and actually it wasn't early on, she already had a master's. She had her master's and was just like, this is not for me.
You have to know what you want, your passion. My daughter-in-law, who is an RN, what her skill is hair. She can, I have my own hair, but she can put the hair on, and she knows all those things. She can do it. And she was making hand over fist, and I couldn't understand. Why wouldn't you do, girl, why don't you just do this? But she always wanted to be a nurse. And I give her props. And she's got 3 kids and a husband, and it did not stop her. She persevered. She was in one program and it failed, and she had to go and transfer into another program, lost some credits. You just need to stop. You need to go ahead and do that hair and make that money. You got kids to take care of. And she would make that money to help her husband provide. And he said, if you want to go to school, keep going, keep pressing. And when she got her nursing degree, and she is now an RN, I had to give her 100% props, because she persevered, and it's something she is passionate about. I watched her through all odds pursue that thing, and she did it. And so you have to want something, and that being comfortable being uncomfortable, she was never that. She was always uncomfortable, even though she had the ability and the skill to do this thing. That's not what she wanted to do. Her passion and desire was somewhere else. And no matter what it took, she had to go to school. She had to stop school because she had babies, and she had to go back to school. She never gave up. To me, that says something about somebody. And when I look at resumes, that's what I look at. When I see gaps or time frames, I'm looking, what's the story behind it? Tell me your story.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about resumes.
Right into where I was going next. Resumes. Good
I'm getting ready to update
bad
mine. So.
resumes. What should be there? Give us some ideas.
So it's interesting. So in my current organization, you are allowed to provide a resume, but we have an application. And what I find is I actually align my application. Most organizations, I won't say most, everything's changing these days, but many organizations still require an application. And I line my application up beside your resume, because your resume is something that you tell your story about, and you can put in your resume what you want to highlight. And it can sound really great and wonderful, but the way we structure our application, I can tell a story. I can look at your history. You can't leave anything out. So people have learned that your resume, you can leave things out. You can do a chronological resume, or you can do a resume without time and date. So I don't have to know that there was a big lull in your career, and there was some issues which you had at your last job because you don't stay on a job long.
Can I intersect real quick about that piece? What do you think is a decent amount of time? What would be a red flag? Let me flip it and say a year.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I didn't mean to cut you off. Those people who jump from job to job, they always seem to get the job. Like, how? You can never stay at a job. So
yeah, because they don't put on their resume that they didn't only at the last job a year. Or the hiring manager didn't ask the right question. Ari, what we've had to, that we have to temper that expectation, because the new generation does not believe in a time loyalty on a job that my generation believes in. And so we've had to step back and do an assessment of, you can't hold that against somebody because they weren't on a job. They were on a job less than 5 years. So, but I asked the question. I need to know. And in where our application is structured, it tells me why. You know, if it says, for instance, law said military, military spouse, then I immediately understand and I move on, and that now does not become a factor in my assessment of that person. But if you said better opportunity, my thinking is, well, when are you going to slow down and give something to the organization you're with? Because I'm always looking for, what are you bringing to the table? We always want to go somewhere, well, what have they done for me lately? And as a hiring manager, I want to know, what are you going to do for me? And how long can I trust you to do it for?
Anything else about resumes?
Well, we stick with everybody's like, your resume should be 1 page. Well, that if your resume, that's not necessarily true, guys. Okay. I just think that if you have educational experience, you have a long work history, or even if you include, you could be a public servant or a volunteer who's belonged to many organizations, and you serve through that, then you want your skills to shine in your resume. The jobs you have are important, but when talking about the job, what skills, what did you do? I look for action words. I look for impact. Those are the things I look for on a resume. If you get above, 3 pages, 4 pages, then you're going into a vitae or something. Then right. I mean, my resume, I've had to, people, I have a long career, but in my career, I have had to apply for a job in my own organization. And so I've had to, I've been faced with having to look somewhere else. And so, my resume is always updated. I go periodically and update my resume. But I make sure I keep it at, my resume is 2 pages. And I have 30 years of experience, and I still keep it at 2 pages.
So let's talk about something you just mentioned, organizations. And so that's always an iffy thing. Like, should I include an organization, a civic organization that I work with? When is it appropriate to include that on a resume?
I think if you are proud of your organization and it is an organization that is well known, I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, proudly has a long history of public service, lines directly up with what I do in my career and where I serve, I'm definitely putting that on my resume. Also recognizing that many people wouldn't know what it is and they would have to ask you. And it gives you an opportunity to talk about. So what you think about is it gives you an opportunity to talk about your skill sets in another arena. So if something's on somebody's resume or their, so I look at their skills, then I go and look at their references, and then I see what their references skills are. And then I see what organizations they belong to. And if I'm not familiar with it, thank God for Google, and what everybody needs to know is we Google everything.
Yes.
And I'll find out about that organization. And then I'll ask questions if I choose to interview you about that. What have you done? If it's an organization that I know that has, great history or does great work, what have you done? Because a lot of people just a member.
Right.
Have not done anything.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Should you maybe include like things or skills that you've developed through working with the organization, or should you just list it like if they apply to? Or
I wouldn't. It's hard for me to say that because if I'm in an organization, I'm there to serve. So I'm always going to do something. So my organization will say, I'm a board. I sit on the board of J.C. Lewis Health. So I'm a board member. But I'm not just a board member. I chair the marketing committee. So you say as you're a member. So that's why it's important if you join these organizations, because there was a time in my generation that people, we would say you do things just to put them on your resume. Well, hiring managers got smart to know, well, no, you just got that on your resume. You're a member, but what are you doing? And if you don't show, if I don't see you got an office beside your name, or you led the organization's efforts to raise money for a children's camp, or to do a business class for young people or something, it's just on your resume.
I would add, when you're putting in your organizations, that you know who your audience is. because there's some audience, they do not want to see your sorority or fraternity, and they will disparage you just because of that, because you don't know what their history is. So I would be mindful of that. And then in terms of your resume, cater that as well, because in certain organizations, they don't want your paper copy of your resume. If they ask you to fill out their online resume, you need to make sure that you go in and fill out that resume instead, because they will not go through your resume. If you say, oh no, I don't feel like doing this, I already have a resume. And even myself, I did that when I made the switch over to out of the city of Savannah. I was like, oh, I'm just gonna give them this resume. It got everything in it. It's good, it's nice. And I wasn't getting hired. I wasn't even getting referred. And I said, what? And some jobs, one of them was a secretary position. And I was like, I had a secretary. What you talking about? And so what I had to understand was, okay, this is a whole nother level here. And I had to literally build my resume from scratch using the job's description and what they had within that job. And take it one step further, they have a questionnaire and it might be 20 questions. I have to be able to show them proof of my ability to handle those 20 things within that resume that I create. And so every job has its own resume. So you can't just say, oh, I'm gonna use this blanket resume that I created in the system and use it for this job, that job, that job. Nope, the KSAs are all different for each job. And so that's just a little tidbit for those that are looking to go in other areas, especially within government.
Oh, absolutely. Any job, even without government, if they give you an app, tell you to fill out an application,
You better do it.
But it's not an application,
fill out
though.
an application.
But it's not an application, and that's where
Their resume.
Yeah, they call it a resume. You fill that out, and then the next step, then you see the questions. And so you have to research ahead of time, pull those questions before you even complete that portion of the process. And there's like 50 hoops to jump. And a lot of people say, I can't figure out how to get on at this job. And I said, I bet you the number one reason is that resume that you built was not catered, and you're going up against other people, and you have to be able to show proof. And some people think, oh, it says I need to do this XYZ system. You're not going to be in that system unless you work for them. If you don't work for them, you need to tell them how these other systems that you worked with applies to that.
All right. So Margaret, we have got our attire together. We've gotten a resume to the point where we've got an interview.
Okay.
I need to know what some bad interviews look like that you've seen. Please give us a scoop. Let us know.
Okay, it's English. And I'm just thinking English. That's why I was like, my English. So my grandmother taught me growing up that you have to have two languages. And even though I have a minor in English, my training started early on, because I would try to tell my grandmother a story or something is going on, and I couldn't get through if the subject and verb didn't agree. I couldn't get through if I was using the wrong pronoun. She would stop us. And I can remember saying, can I just please tell you what I'm trying to tell you? And I cannot tell you how we are sitting there in interviews and the language skills are so poor today that I'm thinking, I can't send you anywhere to represent us. Oh my goodness, you just butchered that sentence. Now I understand that I'm at the next level with that. So I don't even take them to, like, it's called the position I'm hiring for. You know, if I'm hiring for a position that's going to pay you over 50 grand, then yeah, I have some real high expectations. So, but my number one thing, Ari, to answer your question is your ability to speak the King James English, not the English that you speak with your friends, not the English that you hear on your radio and your songs, but English. The other thing is people who get so nervous in interviews. I've known people who've interviewed, who I know them. And when they walk in that interview room and we're sitting at the table, and we often do group interviews, which is the new thing. We've always done it, but I'm now hearing other corporations are now recognizing, and you need a group interview because I have a perception, you have a perception, everybody sees something different. And I think we need all those people's perceptions at the table to pick the right candidate. Because I might miss something, you might miss something. But when people walk in that room and they have to sit it, now we call it the hot seat.
Yeah.
Got 3 or 4 people looking at them, they immediately lose all thought process. And we're sitting there, we've had the opportunity to hire people who've worked for us for a long time. We know they're great and wonderful. We know they can do this, but they have to interview. And they get in the chair and we're thinking, who is that person?
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been in that kind of position. It is nerve-wracking, but all those people are in front of you. But I talk with my hands, so for me, I had to like, put my hands down and just relax to talk because I was getting it was too much of this. So
yeah.
I feel for them.
Yeah, and what we do oftentimes is when we recognize that they're nervous, we try to put them at ease and say, okay, just take a deep breath. I have stopped interviews for people who, because I want to see their best self. You got to the table because I've taken the time, and guys, we get hundreds of applications. Mm-hmm. So to get down to where I'm interviewing you, I know how to put a lot of time in. So I recognize that I saw something in you to even get you to the table. So I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath. Can we get you some water? Can we help you? And you can start over.
That's good. I think that will put people at ease a little bit.
And it does. And then we get to see their true self.
Now, one thing I mentioned that was important, and we hear this buzzword nowadays, code switching. Are you familiar with that terminology?
I've heard the term.
Yeah. So being able, like you said, to kind of speak in a more professional, the King's English, as you mentioned, in professional settings, and turning that, and then maybe being more relaxed when you're in a more relaxed atmosphere. Absolutely. And I think that sometimes people don't know how to switch that off and on. And
it's a practice. It takes practice. It takes practice, and it takes you. If you speak that way at work, if you speak that way at home, then you can't level up. We're talking about leveling up. And mm-hmm. What do you need to do? Well, that might be the thing you need to do. You might need to start practicing. How do I improve my language skills? And so I have had to hire people who had less than the 100 I would want, their language skills or their writing skills, because we ask for writing samples. And for whatever job we want a writing sample.
Yes.
We need to know your thought process, and are you able to coherently deduce some things and come up with some things. But I am raising up young professionals, and I am telling them, this is an area you need to improve in. And I have a story on that one. So when I started my professional career, as a Savannah State graduate, I was fortunate to get internships and Dr. Elmore and Miss Novella Cross Holmes. I had a wonderful team behind me, and so I said, I'm going to make sure, and I did my internship at the Herald, that I'm going to ask where job I go to, can I have an internship position? Nobody needs to get paid. And if people willing to come work for free, then we could use them. I hired he was an undergrad student at Georgia Southern in public information. And I hired him to come be my intern at the city of Savannah. He went on a job interview. Through my relationships, he got in a job interview, and my person came back and said, great, wonderful, but his language skills are not what we need. She owned her own advertising firm, and it's a big advertising firm. I need his language skills to be better. Mm-hmm. And I told him that, and now he could have gotten upset. He did not. He went back and he worked on that thing. He got a job with, at the time it was Carson Products here. Mm-hmm. He got a job with Carson Products. They eventually moved him to Chicago. He started his own business. He has his own hair care line now that's in stores. And he comes home every now and then and looks me up and reminds me of that he worked for me, and tells people, and he's got a big personality, and he's about 6'2". And I always remember thinking that my friend, who was a professional person who I knew from my leadership Savannah class, and knew that they were looking for someone, and I asked her to give him an opportunity to interview. I knew he wasn't ready. He was still in school. He was about to graduate. But you need to know what you don't know. What is it I need to improve on? And if you're not taking those opportunities, so oftentimes we allow people to interview with us in our organization who we know aren't qualified for the job we have, but we need them to recognize what we're looking for and what it is like when you walk into that room. So language skills is number one. Code, and you need to get that down pat. I had somebody curse in a job interview. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I've had some things.
What they said, Margaret.
It's just part of your language. So, and you just go, wow, did that just happen?
Now, can I ask a question? Was this person a Southerner, or was this person someone that was a transplant or came in from either the West or North?
No, they were a Southerner.
Wow.
Were they military?
They were, I don't know their home origin. I know they were currently working in the region.
Okay. Because I sometimes wonder how much of a difference that makes, because I think where you are in the country, not the cursing part, but I mean in general, as far as what's appropriate, what's acceptable, even from a
I don't think cursing on any region is appropriate for an interview.
Yes, Britt. They do. Okay, let me say this like this. All young professionals did not take the trajectory that we have taken of getting to college, being trained, being chastised and straightened out. Some people come with the years of experience. We have a thing that says an education, years of experience in lieu of education.
Okay.
So they've got years of experience and have the skill set in that, which is why soft skills training has become such a big deal. When we interview employers in our community and ask them what's the number one issue they have, they say soft skills, coming to work on time, knowing how to speak to people and talk to people. Profanity and the N-word are not everyday conversations in the workplace. But we are not raising people to know that. We're making it okay because of TV. And I mean, I just will go back to last Sunday in the Grammys. Our idea of what is acceptable at prime time is impacting everything. And leveling up means you can't do that and think that you're going to be considered for a professional next level position. I get passionate about this stuff because I think we're doing such a disservice, and I don't want to, you old and that's just the old way y'all want to do it. Some things have less to do about old and young and with what is right and appropriate.
Absolutely.
For the moment you're in.
That's why I think foundations are so important. And having people who will, like you said, pull you to the side and say, hey, this isn't right. If you want to advance to these positions, you may want to work on this, you may want to work on that. And for me, that was something that I felt was an advantage of going to Savannah State. I felt like it was more than just a school. It was like a family where people are going to pull you like, look.
Absolutely.
If you want to elevate, and even beyond being a student, when people know you from that atmosphere, then there's, okay, here's some things that you may need to work on, to kind of give you that insight, not like inside, but, just some, like you said, mentorship, feedback, in a way that, you'll be receptive to it. Like with the young man you mentioned.
Everybody won't receive it.
And I also want to plug in Savannah State for Dress for Success Wednesdays. Like, they taught me how to dress for an interview, so I think that initiative was a great one.
And they still have it to this day.
Yep, because some people just don't know,
Yes, and you don't know what you don't know. That's the sad part.
Yes.
And the beauty in Savannah State, as a Savannah State graduate, you know, I had people who came to school from towns and communities that I never heard of. And they didn't even have the opportunity or anybody around them. You know, they might have been the first generation in their family to go to college. So,
Right
you know,
here.
so they came with nobody at home to teach them this stuff, but Savannah State did. You absolutely right. I think that's the blessing of attending an HBCU. And it's interesting that in this time we're living in, it's getting such popularity that, but we've all known that HBCUs give us more than the education and the great foundation. And I tell people when they start disparaging HBCUs, oh, but you think Ohio State is great and wonderful, right? Well, from a 4-year degree at Savannah State, I got a full scholarship to Ohio State to get a master's degree. You can get anywhere from here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. I concur. Yes. But I think, like you said, it also depends on the individual and their willingness to accept the feedback. You have to be open to accepting the feedback. Like you said, having those courageous conversations and then doing some self-reflection to say, okay, this is the feedback I'm getting. I've heard this a few times, so maybe it is true. Yeah. Maybe these are things that I do need to work on if I want to level up to the next level, if I want to go to the next step. And so having that foundation and then, you know, with the skills that you develop and then experience, you know, I think that can really just, you know, take you to the next level. So.
And those courageous conversations.
Yes. Always on a continuous level.
Always.
I think another issue sometimes you get in positions and you think, okay, I know it all. You know, like I'm at a point where I don't need, you know, so for someone that's been, you know, experienced and been working for 10, 15 years and they're thinking, okay, I've been in this field and they kind of, you know, know the basis of what I'm doing at this point, but you know, like I might want to do something. How can they at that point, you know, move forward?
Oh, that's interesting. So you've been in a career or position for 10 or more years, and now you want to go to the next level, or you want to do something different. I want to understand your question.
Okay, I was meaning, let's say do something different. Say you've been working. I'll take myself for an example. My field or trade is in social work. But in social work, there are a variety of fields and roles that you can work in. So say you've been working in one sector, say medical social work, but you didn't want to translate or transition over to another segment that you may not have as much experience in because you've been doing medical social work for a while.
So LaRamsley talked about that when she said, even though she was talking about a particular organization or entity, but it's the same concept. You take your resume and what you've done and you make it fit to where you're going. Mm-hmm. So I have a mass communications degree with a concentration in news editorial with a minor in English. So that means I should write, I should be an English teacher, I should be a reporter. And I have a master's degree in public administration with a concentration in human resource management and city management. My two passions, how do I marry them together? Well, I immediately started looking in those organizations of government service to find out, do they do anything about communications? Who writes? Mm-hmm. Do they have a newsletter? What is my specialty and my gift I'm bringing to the table, and how can I make that fit into where I want to go? And then you find it in that organization and you create your resume and fill your application towards that. So you, even though you don't, people think they don't have experience, Ari, and what they find out is that you do have experience. It's how you word it. And I would venture to guess if LaRamsley would answer that when she had to shift into the application that was presented to her and the resume that was presented to her, she found that I'd done this, but we called it that, but it lines up with what you're asking here. So I take that and I fill it here. And when I get through, I find out I've done and have all those things you need. We just called it something different.
So I have a question to you all's point as far as I want to flip it. So as far as the experience, what do you do with those positions where you're overqualified or you're always told that you're overqualified. Then the other position is like, you don't have enough experience. So you're kind of torn between the two. Like, I'm always overqualified, or something higher, I don't have enough experience.
So my first question is, why are you applying for something you're overqualified for?
Because those might be the things that the person have experience in, right? So you're just trying to like get your foot in the door, just hypothetical.
Well, I'm going to tell you that we always like to hire somebody with more skills, but that's me, because I might use you in different ways. But the fear many organizations have is if I hire you, and rightly so, because it costs a lot of money to hire people. If I hire someone who is overqualified for the job that I'm posting, they're not going to stay long. They're going to leave as soon as something else comes along. I'm just telling you from a hiring manager's point of view, what their perception is. So you have got to be able, you've got to get an opportunity to be able to sell to them that I know it seems, but I want to be here. Why do you want to be here? Why are you looking at this job? And if you tell me you just want to get your foot in the door, you're telling me you only want to be here for a little while to do something different. And so words matter. So we have to be really careful about what we say. And that is what I think of when I see somebody who's really qualified. We had a PhD apply for an administrative assistance position for us. I couldn't do that. I've had some great, but I sent them to somebody else. And we had the assistant city manager's admin interviewed with us. And when she interviewed with us, we were like, you are awesome, but we would be doing you a disservice. You need to go downtown and interview downtown. And she did end up getting a senior admin position in the ACM's office because she was that great and good, which was more than what we needed. She was overqualified for what I was looking for. So I would have done her a disservice. She would have been miserable doing what we needed her to do when she had so much more to offer.
Gotcha.
I think your willingness to provide that feedback was very important. Instead of just saying, you didn't get the position or you're not qualified, but saying, we would be doing you a disservice. Here is an opportunity of something that may be a better fit for you. So it's not just, I manage staff now. And so I always, when I try and give them some type of feedback, I try not to just give what they consider maybe negative, but also a positive to it, to say, this is something that may be more beneficial, or to pursue this route or do something a little different. So it's not just, no, we're not going to give you this job, but here's something that may be more of a fit for you.
Absolutely.
Do you have any parting words for someone that's leveling up? What would you leave them with?
I would say that all that we've talked about today, I think that the most important thing is that if you're leveling up, you need to remember three things. You need to do a self-assessment of your own skill sets, have a courageous conversation with yourself, and want to know, where am I leveling up to, or what am I trying to get to? The second thing would be, what's my long range goal? Am I going to move into a company where I am going to only give them a little bit because, I don't know what I want to do, but I'm just going to go here. Those kind of moves follow you, and everything you do follows you. And so you need to remember that. Every relationship you have, every organization you belong to, every service you provide, somebody's always watching, and always remember that. And when somebody, when you never know who you're going to meet. We say we're 6 degrees of separation. We are no degrees of separation. Everybody's connected across the world, across the country. We are more connected than ever. And so remember that. And always just present and be the person you want to be, your authentic self, all the time.
Awesome. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, be your most authentic self in every setting. Mark, we thank you for coming on this week with us, or for this episode. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Lab Review. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Thank you.
And I love you all.
Thank you.
Love you.
Bye-bye.